That was a lot. Expectations are of them and you of them and them of you. They may not. I don't know. I'm so proud of myself. That works for us. I think could work for you as well.
We're Agency Performance Partners. APP is your insurance agency's best friend when it comes to training, strategies, the brutal truth, and tough love that'll grow your agency with hugs and high fives along the way, just like a BFF.
Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's the mayor here, Heath Sharon. Month's topic is a fun one, and it's the agency assessment. And we're talking about a lot of really cool stuff here. And the blog that we wrote this week, or that I wrote this week, is entitled How to Have an Effective Agency Meeting, or effective meeting in your agency, however you want to word that. It's something that I think is very crucial. And a lot of agencies shy away from weekly meetings, either A, because of a time issue, or they don't want to, or maybe they get a lot of crickets in their meetings. They just don't know how, or whatever that might be. But I think in order to run an effective agency, you got to have an effective sales meeting or a team meeting or whatever you want to call that. The other thing that I also see, and we'll get into this a little bit too, is that a lot of times it's just the salespeople in those meetings, and they may not include the rest of the team. And so I want to dive into a little bit for the purposes of this blog and this podcast and this video. We're going to talk about as a team meeting. Not departmentalized or anything like that, but just as a whole agency team meeting. And I want to discuss it in the sense of a weekly meeting. First of all, as we get into this, I want to discuss this in the sense of, before we can get into the actual meeting itself and the meat and potatoes of the meeting itself, we got to discuss when we're going to have the meeting and how often the meeting is going to happen and all that good stuff. Because again, as I go back to what I said earlier, it's got to be a weekly meeting. I think that consistency is key there. I think the weekly meeting needs to be something that your staff knows about each and every week. And they know to block off their calendar at that time. They know not to schedule anything else at that time. They know to let you know ahead of time of vacations. They can be thinking about the topic at hand. They can be focused on things. When it comes down to the meeting time, they know what to expect and what those expectations are of them and you of them and them of you. That was a lot. You know what I mean? So I think it's crucial there that you do have that. And in my opinion, a lot of agencies in the past have talked to you about their failures in weekly meetings. It's usually because maybe they try to go too long in their meetings, or they didn't have enough time. I think that you've got to find a good sweet spot there. I think a good 60 to 90 minutes is a good gauge there of how often you should meet and how long you should meet. And some agencies do it maybe on a weekly basis. So let's say Mondays or on Fridays or Wednesdays or whatever you decide to do. You want to do it at lunch, you want to do it in the mornings before the phone gets busy. I would only say the only time I wouldn't do it would be Fridays at 3 or something. I think you're going to lose some engagement there. So I think whatever you do, you just got to be consistent with it. I think you just need to do it that way. And I also think the old pandemic taught us a lot of things about virtual, and some people that say they can't make it, or they can't meet, or they're out of town for this, or maybe they work from home. I think you have to have an option for them to join via Zoom, or Teams or Slack or GChat or whatever the form of internal communication that you use in your agency. I think you got to be able to have those options for them. Now that you've got the date and the calendar, you've got all of those things set up, I really do think it's good just to discuss kind of a general format of what you want to do in those meetings. Let's be honest, meetings are a lot better when you have engagement, and they're a lot better when it's just not somebody droning on and on and on, like Charlie Brown's teacher or the dry eyes guy or the Ferris Bueller's teacher, whatever you want to say. God, it's an old reference. I'm sure some of the young people that are watching this may not know who that is, but great movie. You should check it out. You want to make sure that it's engaging and it's fun and it's exciting and things like that. And I think a good way of doing that is having a set agenda every week. So you kind of know what's going on, what to expect, those kind of things. I think that's very important there to make sure you do that. Here at APP, we follow a simple format every week that works for us. I think could work for you as well. We start off our meetings, we share wins and losses, we go over reports, and we have all these things kind of into 5 or 10 minute segments. We do review of stumbling blocks. You'll see this in the blog. We get into goals, processes that we go over, knowledge-based articles, things like that. And then we end with a one-word close. I think that's just something fun just to kind of get everybody's mental mindset of where are you now at the end of the meeting? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? What's up? I think once you get all that down, I think you're in a much better spot there. And I think that if everybody knows what to expect at every meeting, kind of the flow, they'll be likely to stay on track. You'll be likely to get some discussion, and people will be thinking ahead of time about those things. Oh, wait, meeting's coming up. I got to get ready for my wins and losses. And they'll be excited about sharing those. Once you can do that, that's a whole lot better way of doing things. The next thing that I really think is important, any sales meeting, I may camp here for a minute, is once you've got your agenda laid out, your time of the week, I think it's important on every single sales meeting that you have transparency. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, you and your buzzwords. What a trendy buzzword, transparency. Well, transparency is more than just a buzzword, in my opinion. And I know it's a buzzword from the last 4 or 5 years. It's still that way now. I think it's more than that. It's a catalyst for that communication. Man, catalyst. What a big word for me. I'm so proud of myself. But it's a catalyst for that communication, that accountability throughout the organization. I think that transparency is the key to a great meeting with collaboration in all departments, not just sales, not just service, not just this, not just that. But it's a great way holding people accountable. It's a great way for sharing the progress. It's a great way for celebrating wins, but also talking about and learning from the losses too. I think transparency should be not just in sales, but in service. There should be metrics laid out there for the service team, for the sales team, for the CSRs, the account managers, the receptionist, HR, even management. It should be tracked in the management system. Sales is obviously easy, but maybe, and the receptionist, that may be the one that you're like, hey, how do you track that? Maybe how many phone calls or how many rings they pick up on. Maybe if they have a goal of the receptionist or the Dofi is going to pick up after 3 rings. So you can track that, for the management team. Maybe they've got some goals they're trying to hit. You discuss that. You be open and honest about that. Let's look at this kind of like Batman. I know, hang with me. I just saw the latest Batman movie. Think of your reports, like Batman. Batman works beautifully on his own. His gadgets enhance his natural ability. He's got those little things he shoots and the grappling hooks, and he's got this and that. He couldn't do all those superhero things without his gadgets, right? So a good team meeting has transparency, it has reports, has things like that in the same way. Those transparent reports and those numbers and the transparency and what you're trying to do, that could be your superpower to motivate your team to be greater, to have a greater outcome, to add accountability, to foster healthy competition and add excitement to your agency meetings, right? Hopefully y'all follow my Batman analogy there. I think that transparency and numbers and goals are huge there. I think you need crystal clear goals for everyone. They should be discussed and celebrated, achieved, and discussed with intent when they're not achieved, right? So celebrate the wins and the losses. We discuss this at every meeting at APP, and I suggest the same thing for you and your team. It's just a way, again, to celebrate together, to do well in that together. I think you should kick off all your meetings on a high note by talking about those things. Take a look at the metrics ahead of time so you can be prepared for those things and know when those are coming. If they're not going to be spoken of, then you can do that for them. And you can discuss the progress and the strategic accounts and all of those things. Give them an opportunity to highlight other people on their team. Weekly shout outs and amongst other things. If you have a lot of wins for the team, then use these. Should be definitely celebrated. However, effective meetings should also uncover losses. Look for opportunities to grow and to learn. It could also be great opportunities for humility and in times to have that accountability to say, why did you lose this account? What happened here? Not just, high fives and kissing babies and happiness for the wins, but also opportunities to learn from those losses, to gain perspective. A lot of times, once you step back from a loss, you can gain perspective when you want to share those in the meetings. So it's a great opportunity in those meetings to discuss those things. Again, a good agency team meeting should have both wins and losses celebrated in there. I love an effective agency meeting. I think that it's really, really effective when everybody's on the same page, when you've got that's transparency. You've got open and honest dialogue. You've got your wins and your losses. Effective meeting is one that, whether I'm an agency manager, whether I'm a team member, I think a good meeting is one you walk out excited about, energized from, not dragged out of I just went to this meeting. People should come in excited about it. I think that when you come into or out of a meeting and you've learned something, I think that's huge. That's another thing, that I want to talk about. Let's talk about educating your team during a meeting. I think you should always look for opportunities to educate your team, not just on policy procedures or not just on like processes, not just on education, on all of the things. A lot of people tend to just talk about the latest products or what the appetite guide is of their favorite carrier. No, use this as an opportunity to educate your team on the processes, on the sales processes, on maybe cold call scripts, or on a procedure that you just came up with for I don't know, taking payments, or a new certificate endorsement, or a certificate process, or endorsement process, or something, a referral, like, I don't know. Find something to educate your team on, because I think that's going to be huge and vital as well to go through that. Maybe you teach them a new process. Use a variety of different learning and development techniques, maybe peer coaching, maybe somebody on the team leads this discussion. Look for ways to educate your team in moments of engagement. They need to know what's going on in the agency, and I think that transparency helps that. I think education helps that. I'm hoping that this is making sense to you, because I think every meeting should have an opportunity for some sort of education along the way too, because again, in the way I look at it is, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not building and you're growing and you're not moving ahead, then you're just stagnant, which you might as well just be going backwards. So look for ways to educate your team. They need to be up to speed, the latest sales strategies and initiatives, and know about what's going on in the agency when it comes to those things as well as the processes, but don't just focus on one or the other. You know what I mean? With the amount of like communication and all the things that happen in the workplace, it's easy for agencies to miss some of this key information. So you got to make sure that you discuss this at your meetings, so that everybody's gelling together, everybody's cohesive on this. Because if you don't know these things and they're not discussed, because one person may be doing this process and the other team member may be doing this process, and they may step on each other, they may overlap. They may not. I don't know. I just think that it's important that you discuss these things, right? I don't want to spend too much time on that and waste a lot of time on that. I want to discuss as a whole the agency meetings, and just watching the time here, I want to make sure that I don't take too much of your time either on this. But I do think the key to an effective team meeting in your agency are those couple of things: having the agenda set out every week, celebrating wins and learning from your losses. Transparency is huge, going over the numbers, discussing goals, things of that nature, keeping everyone accountable. And then I think you have to have an element of education throughout your team meetings. And then as you wrap up, the last thing I'll talk about is that one word close. I think that's a big deal. Just to get everybody together on that same page to discuss feelings on this. Well, how do you feel about this? Where are you at? Some agencies do it like on a 1 to 10 scale as well. You could do that too. How you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? And then why? So if someone says a 5, then you're like, okay, what's going on? Or if it's a 10, let's talk about why it's a 10. Let's get excited about that 10, right? I think the one word close, or the scale of 1 to 10 close, however you want to do it, I think it's important to end on a note where everybody's on the same page and we know where we're at. And you can kind of judge the meeting from there. You can kind of survey that. Not every meeting is going to be a 10, but not every meeting is going to be a 1 either. And it's okay to have a bad meeting or a 3 or a 4, because maybe it's a 3 or a 4 because of they're overwhelmed by all the information's coming at them, or they need to process this, or maybe they're backlogged on this or that. It's okay. It's not your fault if it is. So I think all of these things are good discussion points for us to talk about, to have an effective team meeting. Guys, go out there, crush it today, and I look forward to hanging out with you on the next one.